Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, and I'm joined by Acey Roberts. I actually went to middle school with Acey at Florence Middle back in the day. We're gonna talk a little bit about everything that's going on around Ole Miss. But before we get started, I do want to let everybody know that the Grove Collective has launched a new campaign. It's called March to Victory. And what it is a bracket-style tournament that puts regions up against regions, and you can compete to see who can contribute the most money for the Ole Miss NIL Collective. So that's grovecollective.com/March to Victory. Acey, how you doing, buddy?
Man, it's great to see you. I see you working hard. You're grinding. I watch your shows a lot of the time. I appreciate what you're doing because, I'm a Florida guy now like you are. And so I don't get as much Ole Miss news as I used to. So I still love it, still keep up with it as much as I can. YouTube's great because there's quite a few podcasts and things now, switching over to video. And so it's fantastic. I love your format.
Appreciate it. I think David Holly, by the way, he started doing this and we did it, but we do meet and greets down here. So the next time we do that, you need to swing on over because it's in Lakeland.
Yeah, I'm back and forth. I'm in Tampa, but I'm in Orlando a lot. So I pass right by your house, probably every other week, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Anyway, you, like me, went through the 80s and the 90s and this very slow build with Ole Miss football. And I mean, I can't imagine how excited you were when Hugh Freeze got Ole Miss to the Sugar Bowl in 2015. Because if it was like me, like I said, I understand that. But to have a roster that Ole Miss has been assembled, to have a coaching staff that Ole Miss has assembled, to where, honestly, going into this season, it's the way teams have talked about LSU and Tennessee and Florida in the past. But how does that make you feel, man?
Well, it's kind of breaking so many of the stereotypes for Ole Miss, and I tell you, it's what our critics, and our rivals have always, feared probably, but we've kind of overpassed, Auburn. We've overpassed a lot of those big, those. Maybe not the top team, but the next tier teams, the Floridas, and part of me is like, I just don't ever see that happening. I know our alumni base is fairly small and, we don't, we do have the lawyers and doctors that help out with NIL now, but, you just never expect a school the size of Ole Miss to really take that step. But it just goes to show you, just like with Nick Saban at Alabama. Alabama was not, winning like this before Nick Saban. I mean, it takes the right coach. It takes the right personality. You've got to really bring it all together. And that's really what Lane's doing right now.
Yeah, and Lane is just his whole thing is winning. That's all he wants to do is figure out how to win the game. Like he did a story with Andy Staples a couple of days ago where he talked about the disaster that is college football right now. But in that same breath, he says, hey, we're doing this better than anybody. But that doesn't mean it's not a disaster. And I think that mindset is something that Ole Miss has not had pretty much since Vaught, right?
Yeah, so it's just a very unique situation. It's just kind of a lot of things have happened in a positive way all at once. I think that first of all, the boosters have bought in to this NIL. We all agree that it's probably not going to last forever. There's going to be changes. There's going to be a super conference at some point. It's going to change. So Lane has just sold the guys on, look, we don't know what is going to happen next year. We've got to go all out right now. Right this year, let's get as many transfers as we can. Let's be the leader. Let's outcompete, for all these teams on the West Coast that aren't really putting into the money like they could or they should. And so, it pays back. That's the thing I think a lot of, schools don't get is that, you might be paying a lot of money out of your pocket for these players and these salaries. But if you're a local, business owner and you have the available funds to sponsor a team or sponsor a player, that money comes back into the school. It comes back into the state and the city. And so, if you're in a situation where you can recoup some of that, increase crowd, supply for when there's a huge game in town or when the team's winning, you can afford to do that stuff. It's easy as a business person to understand that.
Yeah, I'm kind of distracted by the artwork behind you. I'm
Yeah,
thinking, is that 1992? That's
that,
Rushell's,
that
Corey
is Russ,
Philpott, and Marvin Courtney,
Russ
right?
Battles, man. Yeah, that's my boy Russ. And I've got an old, I've got a bunch of old, game programs from back in the day in the '60s.
Okay.
I've got a picture of Johnny Vault over there on the side. So
Yeah, and I'm just like I've got Mike McIntyre's playbook from 2000. Whenever Ole Miss moved into the Manning Center, what we called the IPF, I helped Ole Miss move in there, and part of that was cleaning out some storerooms, and the storeroom was like Mike McIntyre's playbook.
I bet you could put your hands on a lot of cool stuff. Yeah, I love going back. The museum, the university, hotel has a lot of great things under glass, that you can look at. But it's changing, man. I don't know how long Lane's going to stay. He's stayed longer than I thought he would, but I really think he's kind of found his space. He's found a place that he's pretty happy. It seems like, there's not a lot of teams. He's bounced around. He's been at bigger schools. He's been in bigger states, and I think he's done that. Maybe he's ready to settle down.
I think he is buying into being an Ole Miss guy, which he hasn't done. Ole Miss was a stepping stone for his first couple of years, and Ole Miss kind of luckily weathered that storm. There's not many places now, I think, that Lane Kiffin would go. There was a story where they mentioned Lane Kiffin in Florida State. If Mike Norvell had gone to Alabama, they were going to come after Lane Kiffin. I was like, well, that's great. Lane's not going to Tallahassee. Have you ever been to Tallahassee? and just because Florida, everybody assumes it's Boca Raton or Miami, but that's not Tallahassee.
Well, like I said, I think he could do it almost anywhere. I think he could be super successful in Tallahassee, Gainesville, Boca Raton, Miami, really anywhere. I really think, like I said, it really does come down to the coach and the leadership. And I think we're fortunate. I mean, he could have easily been at Arkansas, instead of Ole Miss, and he could have had the same path where he just has a great situation, a lot of booster money. But you see, Arkansas is just they're not able to do it. They don't have the leadership. They don't have the passion and the marketing. I mean, Lane is a marketing genius. I mean, he sells himself as much as anything.
Yeah, at Florida Atlantic, they probably don't do it anymore. But when he was at Florida Atlantic, they offered a course on basically his Twitter and the way they do it, because Lane's Twitter, as everybody knows, is a phenomenon.
Yeah.
And but his marketing savvy, his instincts, I mean, it's right on.
It's true. It's you look at Elon Musk, you look at Donald Trump. I mean, all these guys, they get it. That's how you reach out to the public. It's just an immediate connection to the public masses. So it's great.
Well, let's change the subject here real quick, because one of the most funny things that I can imagine happened, and I would love to have heard your conversation with Jake Wimberly over this. But Zack Arnett was basically hired as a volunteer assistant coach or as an analyst at Ole Miss. I do not think that Ole Miss is even paying him a dime. I think it is volunteer. And I think that Mississippi State is going to pay his whole salary, essentially.
Yeah, they're on the hook, for his salary regardless. I mean, if they paid him $100,000, I mean, he would still, Mississippi State would still have to pay the difference. So it's just the game that we're playing. It's a new world. Rivalries really don't mean that much anymore. How these kids transfer in and out so much. I do worry about that a little bit. I do feel like the players in college being so common, or we as fans really latch onto those players when they come in as a freshman, and you really love these kids and you're pulling for them to come to your school, or maybe they went to your high school, or your town, and they stay with your school 4 years, and that's really what we pull for. At the NFL, these players change hands every year, and it's more about the color of the jersey instead of the player. But in college is different. I do worry about that changing. I feel like that could be a bad situation where we just, you just start to lose fans every year. People people going to games and sitting in seats. I think we've got to think a little bit about that as a program. How do we keep that from happening? But, I think that it's just fantastic to see, a few of the guys that come in that have bought into a school like Ole Miss. Like, you see Jackson Dart. There's not a Southern guy. He's not he's from the West Coast. He probably didn't know much about Mississippi, but, to be able to sell some of these guys on Mississippi is let's just be honest, it's a hard sell, especially coming from a big city, big town. Now, most college towns are kind of small, but it's a heck of a job what they're doing right now.
Yeah, and Oxford's kind of an oasis, but if you go very far out in any direction, it can get pretty dire pretty quick, honestly. And I think maybe Jackson Dart, the benefit of Matt Corral, helped sell that.
That's true. And Lane being a West Coast guy, he can kind of have a connection there. But no, Zach, Zach Arnett, all these guys are coaches first. They are, they're in it for their career. They're trying to do what's best for them and their family. I think it's a great situation. I don't think many state fans, I think there's some state fans certainly that would be mad about it and everything, but I think most guys understand that this is business. You're trying to improve yourself, get to the best games, maybe get to the playoffs this year. Ole Miss is, in a great situation to do that and, set himself up for another opportunity, another head coaching opportunity.
And nobody's going to talk about this, but Mike Leach, God rest his soul, when he was at Texas Tech, they basically conned him out of a buyout at the end. And Zach Arnett was obviously a friend of Mike Leach, and he knows probably all about how that went down and how to protect himself in that situation. And I do think that his situation this year is about getting every cent of that money. He wasn't going to let that happen again.
He deserves it, man. Yeah. I don't
think
doubt about it. Now, look, Zach Arnett was put in a terrible situation. You couldn't really blame him for the way that things went down. Now I will blame him for completely changing the offense. He didn't have to do that. That was just a rookie mistake on his part. But a lot of coaches do that, man. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've seen experienced old school coaches come in and, oh no, I'm going to go ground and pound just because that's all I've ever done. That's what my playbook says. That's just old school way of doing things that doesn't work in the 2020s.
Yeah. And it's, like I said, it's all done. Anytime you're a defensive coach, air raid is scary.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a scary term. Like Lane's offense, defense, it takes a special coordinator like Pete Golding. That's a special coordinator to come in and know exactly how this offense works, knowing that you're going to be on the field 35 minutes a game. I mean, that takes a different mindset.
I know that they could have. I know that they went a little too far, down the pass only, option, which they never had to do that at Mississippi State. And I think they could have been much more successful being a balanced or a 65, even 70-30 attack with passing would have been much better. But that's just, again, just that hard-headed coach, that's what he wants to do. That's his calling card. And I think Zach was trying to get more closer to 50-50, but, his roster was built to be that 100% passing, and they had already completely changed the roster over, and then he wants to change it again. I mean, it's just, it's just not going to be successful.
So have you seen any of the basketball season this year? What are your thoughts?
So Chris Beard was obviously a great option, great coach. It's quite a battle to get him. There's a lot of, blowback from the media and all that, but hey, he's not charged with anything. So whatever, that's what they get paid for to make those decisions and hiring and, clear, great coach. What has always been missing at Ole Miss is the post play. We just have never had those exciting, guys that can play the post. We've always been kind of a small ball team, that and haven't been super successful with that. As you know, the history, we've been really struggling through the years and have our bright moments, but it's never been because of our, NBA talent, post play. But that's what Chris Beard brings to the table. That's what he does. He's nationally known. Players search him out. to learn how to play the position. And so that's what really gives us a leg up. This year got off to a fantastic start at 13-0. I think the first time ever. I can't remember when the last time we.
I think, first or second.
And so, it's understandable. They're kind of running out of gas a little bit now, but he hasn't got his guys in there yet. You wait till he gets some of his players in there, and it's going to be fantastic. You get a few of these, real true NBA players, man. We're going to be, making quite a run.
Today I spoke with Daquan Wright, and I asked him questions like, hey, who is turning heads? And he mentioned this, and this is something that everybody should get excited about. He said that whenever there's a one-on-one rep and it's Trey Harris versus Trey Amos, everybody locks in. That is a must-see rep. And Trey Amos is apparently transfer-wise, he's the dude.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got quite a few transfers. I was looking at the roster today. Defense has got a lot of transfers, especially in the secondary. So I'm interested to see how that meshes. But so far, so good. We haven't had any problems with that so far. But man, it's some pretty high talent has transferred into this program. It just seems to get better and better each year.
Yeah, they put the picture out up on the web of Walter Nolan, and I was like, man, we didn't have football players that looked like that before.
You're right.
Yeah.
That was, that's kind of got, when he was being recruited, I just never doubted for a minute that he was going to sign. He waited and the drama and everything. But I was like, man, no, there's no doubt. In any other time, any other coach, I'd be sweating that. But no.
Yeah. The weirdest thing was it took like 9 days or something like that. It was not very long, but everybody was losing their mind and acting like it was a 2-month period that they've been waiting on. And nobody could explain why they were expecting news that day. It was bizarre.
Yeah, everybody's trying to be the first to the news. What do you think about the running back position? Let's talk about our losses here and what we've got left.
I think Ulysses Bentley is a plus Jerry and Ely in the backfield.
Yeah, no doubt.
So it's going to be up to Kedrick Risano or anybody that comes in, because it's not going to be Logan Diggs, because they're going to have to slow play him because of the surgery coming back.
Yeah.
So I think they might go and try and add a back in the portal in the second transfer portal window. But it's going to be about Kedrick Risano. If he can be that Snoop Connor to Ulysses Bentley's Jerry and Ely, I think this offense is going to look a lot more like it did in 2020, 2021.
I love the way those guys used to play off of each other, Quinshawn and Ulysses. It's hard to see him move on, but man, that's just the way things are now. And I hate it, but I worry about him in Ohio State. Like I said, a fan, the way fans worry about players. We want them to be, in the fold forever. But
I'm hoping they come down to a home playoff game against Ohio State and Ole Miss and Oxford.
We we could have been scheduled against them if there were 12 teams in it last year. We would have matched up with Ohio State.
Yeah. And I was I did like 3 or 4 crossovers with the guy from Locked On Penn State in December. And after the game was over, it was like, man, you completely don't know what you had. I mean, that was not that particularly close of a game. But B, I asked him, it's like, hey, what is your plan for tempo? How can you handle that? And he was just answered to the point where he didn't know what I was talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, it might have been the dumbest question known to man. And then about midway through the third quarter, it's like, there you go. That's why.
They had a lot of players, that were not there on the field. So that really made it worse, a bad situation worse. But yeah, we were always going to wear those guys out, because they don't have the offense. They just didn't have the offense to keep up with Ole Miss. But what's everybody feel about Jeff Lebby? How's everybody feel he's gonna work out?
I think Jeff Lebby's going to be okay. Now, and by okay, I mean 8 wins. I mean that's probably his ceiling.
Yeah, I don't think he'll have a huge first year, but
yeah. I don't think in his first year he may not have a winning year. But I think 8 wins. That's an idea. I think he's going to really. he's going to utilize his father-in-law in a way that can help him out, because he's the only one that will even take Art Briles' phone call.
Yeah.
And Briles is pretty good at building programs up. So that template, what they did at Baylor, I think they're going to try and do that same thing at Mississippi State. The problem is right up the road in Oxford is, basically Jeff Lebby's a great value version of Lane Kiffin.
Mm-hmm. You got so much competition, all around you, Auburn, Alabama, Ole Miss. That's always going to be a problem for Mississippi State. But so that I've always also talked about it's a zero-sum game between Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Like, you cannot really have both of these teams doing well at the same time. It's just not the way that the state is set up. It's not the way the SEC is set up. And so, it was always a battle between which one is going to take this step in the modern era, and move forward. And it's been head to head. It's been neck and neck until just recently. And I think Lane is you don't want to overlook Jeff Lebby, but he's in a great situation.
Oh, he's trolling Mississippi State at the moment. Lane is feeling himself pretty good. He actually called Starkville yesterday Starksville. And he did it on purpose. I mean,
they don't call themselves Starkville. They have all sorts of nicknames themselves. So,
yeah, the funny thing is, I can't. By the way, just the thing, I can't stand that stuff like the Stark Vegas.
No, I know.
And I can't stand that. But I can't stand people refer to Oxford as the Velvet Ditch.
Yeah,
and it's like that's not a compliment.
It was a little bit more that came about a little bit more from Tunica and the Delta than Oxford, but that's a little bit of an ode to our literary history in Oxford. But so I don't hate that, but yeah, it's not a compliment either way. Or for Oxford, no.
Yeah, and people call it Stark Vegas. That's an ironic name. Because there's nothing to do there. It's not Las Vegas.
Well, to state fans, it is, though, and that's what's ironic about it.
Yeah, it is absolutely nuts. Anyway, before we get out of here, how good's this baseball team, you think?
Man, I'm worried about our baseball team. The pitching seems to be, which how Bianco is. He's going to milk the pitching staff, and he's going to teach all year until the playoffs, and then they'll figure it out. So I think that's what's going on, is that he's putting them in rough situations. He's letting them play pitch a little longer than he should. How he does, and he's training them as he goes, and eventually they'll figure it out. But it's always been a little bit of a that's always been frustrating about Bianco, and that's why fans give him hell. But I think that he's going to do well. It's going to be hard to compete with success just in Omaha. I don't think this is an Omaha team, but I'm not sure if he's going to be around again for another big Omaha run. But hey, he deserves to do whatever he wants and stay as long as he wants. Yeah,
and he should honestly, whenever he decides to hang him up, that stadium should be Mike Bianco Stadium.
Oh man, fantastic! It's. I hate that, we have so many negative fans, as many negative fans as we do, but it's a very competitive state in baseball. I mean, all three, D1 schools are very good in baseball. So it's tough place to play.
Yeah. I used to have a birthday parties as a kid, and my mom just joking out, she's like, hey, don't forget, we're going to get you birthday hats. And it was like, everybody that went to the birthday party, it's like either an Ole Miss, a State, or a Southern hat, depending on who they were fans of.
Right.
But I remember that pretty clearly. That even in a weird situation before college baseball was much of a thing, college baseball was a thing.
Yeah, in Mississippi.
Yeah.
Mississippi and Louisiana were the only schools that played, only states that played college baseball, it seems like. So. So it's great and fantastic to finally get one. That's just a huge sigh of relief for all Ole Miss fans.
Exactly. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Acey Roberts, thank you very much, man. Another perspective on this channel filled with perspectives. We'll talk to you later, buddy.
See ya.